In the 1930s, under Japanese colonial rule, a young Korean poet in his mid-20s wrote a short story that would later reshape modern Korean fiction. At the time, it felt strange and difficult. It did not resemble the fiction readers were used to. Only decades later did its daring narrative voice begin to be recognized. It begins with a question. Have you ever seen a genius preserved like a specimen? The story's narrator, who speaks as I, lives at number 33. 18 households share the address. In Korean cultural imagination, both 33 and 18 can carry faintly erotic associations, something the text never explains, yet does not entirely conceal. He is in his mid-20s, intellectually sharp, capable of invoking Malthus and Dostoevsky with ease. His mind is agile, ironic, even paradoxical. Yet in the ordinary mechanics of life, money, work, desire, he behaves like a child who has never learned how the world functions. During the day, the house is quiet. In the dim rooms, young women sleep. At least, he assumes they do. He cannot be certain. All 18 rooms are occupied by young women. Among them, his wife is the most beautiful. At least, he believes so. At night, when he steps out toward the toilet, he sometimes encounters them in the narrow passage. They know one another by sight, but they do not speak. He sleeps day and night himself. Silence belongs to the daylight. As evening falls, the bedding is folded away.
The room that receives sunlight is hers. In the morning, a square of light, the size of a cloth bundle, enters. By afternoon, it shrinks to the size of a handkerchief and disappears. My room never receives light. How it came to be decided that the brighter room was hers and the darker room was mine, I no longer remember. I have no complaints. Whenever she goes out, I hurry into her room, separated from mine by nothing more than a thin paper door. If I listen carefully, I can hear her speaking with her customers. They never speak of me. It is as if I do not exist. I open the eastern window, and sunlight floods in, striking her dressing table. Bottles of different colors glitter brilliantly, and watching them shine is my greatest amusement. I take out a small magnifying glass. I take the thin toilet paper she alone uses. I bend the parallel rays into a single point. The point grows warm, then hotter, until the paper begins to scorch. A thin thread of smoke rises, and finally, a tiny hole appears. The brief tension of that moment, it delights me almost to the point of death.
At night, visitors come to her room. When he returns from wandering outside, he cannot enter his own room directly. The only way in is through hers. For that reason, she tells him to come home late, after the visitors have gone. Once he returned before midnight. He saw what he was not meant to see. She scolded him harshly.
Did my wife have a profession? I could not tell. If she had none, why would she go out? Yet she goes out, and she receives many visitors. On days when visitors come, I must lie under my quilt all day. I cannot play with fire. I cannot smell her cosmetics. On such days, I grow deliberately melancholy. Then she gives me money, a 50 John silver coin. I like that. I did not know what to do with the coins. I let them gather by my pillow. She bought me a small metal box, like a safe. I dropped the coins into it, and she kept the key. After that, I paid it no further attention. My laziness preferred not to notice such things.
He tries to investigate his wife's profession, but with his narrow vision and limited knowledge, he reaches no conclusion. In truth, he never asks her. He eats alone. The food is tasteless, poorly prepared. He accepts it silently, like feed set before a dog. His face grows pale. His body grows thin. Sleep comes only in fragments. From beneath his quilt, he studies the source of the money and listens to the voices seeping through the paper door. He wonders why the visitors leave coins behind, yet he never asks.
When the visitors leave, or when she returns from going out, she changes into something simpler and comes to my room. She lifts my quilt and whispers a few bright, animated words into my ear, as though to comfort me. I smile, a smile that is neither mocking nor warm. She smiles back, yet I cannot fail to notice the faint sorrow in her eyes.
His mind moves in curious ways. At times he seems childlike, fascinated by texture, by small sensations. At other times, his thoughts leap suddenly into abstraction. He cannot grasp the practical world, yet he is hypersensitive to idea and feeling. It is from within this divided consciousness that his strange reflections begin. He cannot understand why the visitors leave money for her, nor why she leaves money for him. The flow of coins remains as opaque as her profession. The only pleasure he admits is tactile, the brief sensation between his fingers before the coins disappear again. One day, without drama, he throws the metal box into the latrine, coins and all. It is not rebellion, it is not anger, it is a refusal of the world itself. Lying beneath his quilt, he imagines the earth hurtling through space at tremendous speed. He imagines the earth racing through space. The thought makes him dizzy, as though he might be flung off its surface. Yet what fascinates him is not the vastness of the universe, nor the fear of falling, but something smaller and more immediate, pleasure itself. What kind of pleasure is it? Curious to test pleasure for himself, he slips out at night. He exchanged the silver coins for a 5-1 banknote. The streets excite him almost to fatigue. He roams without direction until late, but he spends nothing. He seems to have forgotten how to use money at all. Exhausted, he returns home earlier than intended. To reach his room, he must pass through hers. He hesitates at the sliding door and clears his throat. The door opens. His wife stands there, and behind her, a stranger. He is blinded by the sudden light. He pretends not to see.
I had no choice. I had to pass through her room.
Later that night, barely conscious, he stumbles toward her again. He collapses onto her bedding and presses the 5-1 into her hand.
I remember only that I placed the money in her palm.
It is the first time since coming to number 33 that he sleeps in her room.
When I woke the next morning, I was still there, in her bed. It was the first time I had ever slept in her room.
He tries to explain the pleasure he felt at that moment, the pleasure of handing her the money, but cannot.
In that instant, I felt something I could not name. I thought I had finally understood why the visitors leave money for her and why she leaves money for me.
Yet he also knows the danger. To return before midnight and meet her gaze is a terror he cannot bear.
Still, I would not trade the joy of sleeping in her room for anything in the world.
Yet that joy had its condition. It depended on money.
Why does paper money not pour from the sky like a sudden shower? Why not even a little?
Seeing him in tears, his wife softens. She soothes him with a gentle voice and leaves money by his pillow. He goes out again. He spends some time in a Western-style restaurant inside Seoul Station. He watches the world move past him. He orders a well-brewed cup of coffee and sits watching the crowd. When rain begins to fall, he has no umbrella. He returns home drenched, too exhausted to worry about visitors or propriety. Soon he collapses into illness. After his fever subsides, he notices something strange. Beneath his wife's dressing table lies a box of sleeping pills. Adaline. It resembles aspirin.
4 tablets were missing. This morning, I had taken 4 aspirin.
Dizziness overwhelms him. He slips the box into his pocket and leaves the house. He climbs toward the hills. He chews the 6 remaining tablets, every one of them. On a bench, he sleeps for a day and a night. When he finally returns home, it is already too late. He sees what he was not meant to see. She throws herself over him, biting at his flesh. He does not resist. The man gathers her in his arms and carries her back into the room. She goes without a word, and yet she turns on him, accusing him of wandering the streets, of stealing, of chasing other women. He cannot answer, not because he is guilty, but because he has no position from which to speak. Quietly, he takes the remaining coins from his pocket and slips them beneath the doorframe. Then he runs. What binds them is not tenderness, but power. At this point, the story shifts. What had seemed childish curiosity turns into something darker. The man who experimented with pleasure now begins to recognize control. The money, the sleep, the confinement, all may have belonged to a quiet system he barely understood.
Aspirin, Adaline, aspirin, Adaline. For a month, she fed me Adaline and called it aspirin. Was she trying to put me to sleep, day and night? Was she trying, little by little, to kill me? No certainty follows. Suspicion and tenderness remain entangled. Perhaps I am mistaken. Perhaps she needed the pills herself. Perhaps we simply misunderstand one another. My mind circles without resolution.
Hours later, he finds himself on the rooftop of Mitsukoshi. It is nearly midday.
I do not know where I have been wandering. When I realize I am standing here, it is already broad daylight. I try to look back on my 26 years, but no clear title rises from the haze of memory. I ask myself, do you desire anything in life? I do not wish to answer yes, nor no. I can barely recognize my own existence.
This is Wings, written in 1936 by the Korean modernist writer Yi Sang. Often regarded as one of the most important works of 1930s Korean modernism, the story portrays the self-consuming and self-dissolving condition of an intellectual living under colonial rule. Rather than confronting social reality directly, it projects the pathology of its time into the inner landscape of divided consciousness. In doing so, it marks a decisive shift in literary technique and a turning point in modern Korean fiction. Unlike many first-person narratives of the 1930s, which often remained at the level of external report or confession, Wings turns radically inward. Through experimental form and the exploration of deep psychology, it achieves a layered, interiorized structure that reshaped the trajectory of the modern novel. The inverted marital relationship, where the husband appears almost kept or domesticated, serves as a metaphor for a life in which values are reversed and the self is estranged from ordinary existence. Cut off from his wife, the only fragile bridge to everyday reality, the narrator confronts a closed world of divided consciousness. His paradoxical desire to fly is not merely an escape, but an attempt at self-redemption, an image shaped by Yi Sung's radical experimental spirit.
And then, suddenly my armpits itch. Ah, the place where my artificial wings once sprouted. Today, there are no wings. In my mind, pages of hope and ambition flicker away like a dictionary being flipped. I stop walking. I want to cry out once. Wings, sprout again. Let me fly just once more.